Good afternoon and welcome to this Governance and Audit Committee. I'm Councillor Tim Harrison, Chairman of this committee. To my right is Joshua Mann. I'd like to introduce you to the newest member of our Democratic Services. Welcome and warm wishes to all committee members, cabinet members and officers. Please try to ensure your mobile phones are switched off or turned to silent mode. As usual, I've not been notified of a fire alarm practice, but should the alarm sound, can we please move swiftly to the closest fire exit, which is the one that I'm being told is behind the screen there, and make your way to the outside on the green directly opposite SK House. Behind that one, sorry, to the right. Yeah, don't go in the cupboard because you'll risk your life. This meeting will be recorded and will be watched as a live stream or later via the SKDC webcast. Do we have any apologies for absence there, Josh?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Helen Crawford and Councillor Mark Whittington.
Thank you for that. Are there any members who have an interest to declare today? Please remember you can declare this if it becomes apparent later in the meeting. No? Okay. We'll go on to item 3, the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of July. Do any members have comments to make on those minutes? No? Okay. Can I have a proposer for the minutes? Councillor Morgan proposing, thank you. Can I get Councillor Stokes seconding, thank you. And if we can take a vote on those minutes. Four. And those against? And those abstaining. Thank you. We'll move swiftly on to item 4, the update from the Council's internal auditors. This report is just for noting, and I invite our internal auditor to deliver a progress report, please.
Thank you very much. So you'll have in your pack a progress report, and you recall the last committee was the first one that BDO came to, which was more of an introduction. So this time you'll have some of our substantive reports in here and an update. So at the moment we feel like we're making good progress. So there are 3 completed reviews that we have done. The first one is not in the pack, but it's just a letter that we issued for the authority. So it's just to make you aware of that. And that was for the Arts Council. So the council received money from them, and as part of the Arts Council they require somebody independent to check whether the council actually used the money in line with those conditions. And so it's not a report, it's a letter we sent to them, and we sent that to them saying that we were happy with how the authority used the funds and did not have concerns. And then there are 2 internal audit reports that we issued, one on staffing capacity and capability, and another on social housing decarbonisation fund, and I'll summarise those in a moment. What you will see is a table within the pack, and that has the various different ticks and colours on there. The first 2 that I've mentioned are there and are in your pack, which we'll go through in a moment. They both have positive opinions, and I'll talk about those in a moment in a little bit more detail. And then you'll see the rest of the plan. We have scoped the various other pieces of work, as we mentioned previously we would do, and it gives you the estimated date as to which committee that we would bring that. At this point, we feel comfortable that we will complete the annual plan that the committee approved last time by the end of March, as anticipated, because 3 of them are done so far. There's 6 left, so we're a third of the way through, but we've made good progress in some of the others as well. So if you're happy, Chair, I was then going to summarise the 2 individual reviews that are here on staffing capacity, and so if I continue going through and then take questions at the end. Brilliant, okay. So the first one is staffing capacity and capability. We have a moderate on design and a substantial on effectiveness, and happy to take questions in terms of what our definitions mean, which I know I briefly covered in the last committee, but if we need to go over that, happy to do so. So as an authority, you have 570 or so staff. It's obviously very critical that you have people, strategies and plans in terms of how you support those staff in that process. And this review was looking at things like your retention strategies, workforce plans, and your people strategy. We have a lot of good practice in this report that we've identified, and that the people strategy is approved by your employment committee. That runs to 2025. We're happy with a number of your workforce plan strategies that are in place as well, and the good practice in the report outlines that, so I take those elements as read. We did identify 3 low findings in this. None of those are ones that we see as significant. One of those low findings was that whilst you have a succession plan in place, which is a document that identifies key roles, who would replace that individual should they not be in post, and what actions would you do to try and mitigate against them not being there, i.e. training or supporting other staff or working with recruiters. Whilst those arrangements are in place, some elements of that document were not all completed, and so we're asking the authority to fully establish that document and to make sure that it's complete, so it places you in a better position for those critical roles that you can retain those individuals. It should be noted, as this is the first one, we provide a summary of these reports to this committee. I would welcome any comments from members in terms of how you want these to be presented. So if they are low findings, we do provide a high level of narrative here. You see in the next report that I go into where there are medium findings, we do provide more detail. If at some point in the future we had a limited report, typically what we do with other authorities, we then do provide that report in full. But I'd be happy to work with the committee in terms of the level of detail that you're looking for and what works best. But that's just an aside and maybe a point as part of the questions afterwards. But otherwise, we felt this was a positive report. There's lots of good practice in there, and we're comfortable that the arrangements at the authority are sound. The second report is on Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. So just for context, the government, previous government had a scheme, it's continuing in this government, which was to give grants out to local authorities to effectively move buildings up which are below band D in terms of energy performance certificates and how environmentally friendly that house is in terms of how it's built. If it's below band D, this funding is to try and bring them up to band C. And what the authority identified when you applied for this funding is that you had 367 properties which were band D to G. And so the money was going to go to that to bring them up to band C. So you received 7.26 million, and there was co-sourcing as part of this, which increased that number. You appointed E.ON, and we were happy with the procurement process to appoint them, and then they go out on your behalf and then go and upgrade these buildings to band C, and that was the purpose of what this funding was for. We were content with some of the contract arrangements and the appointment of them as part of this, and actually the main delivery in terms of moving these to band C, again, we were content that the overall objective was met. However, when we went into some of the conditions of that contract, there were a number of medium findings that we identified that we felt should be improved. Some of those were around KPIs were not identified as part of this, although it was in the contract, and that's to hold E.ON to account to make sure that they've delivered the service that you're paying them to deliver. There was an element in the contract which was around having tenancy engagement strategy, because you need to engage with tenants to actually improve these buildings, but that wasn't performed. And other elements, we found some bits around invoice discrepancies, but they weren't anything significant, and that's why ultimately we've landed on a moderate opinion and not a limited opinion. So whilst there is a number of medium findings here, the overall objectives of uprating certificates was achieved, although there were elements of the contract that weren't present in terms of evidence, and that's why we issued a moderate opinion, but there are a number of medium findings, and you'll see management's response in the report in terms of what they'll be doing, and we will be following these up to make sure that these are implemented as well. So you'll get assurance at future meetings that these have been done. Apart from that, there's just our sector update in the back of the document. So overall, we feel like we're making good progress. I should say around the sector update post this is that we are due to receive the budget from the government at the end of October. And there are early soundings as to what that might mean for local authorities, although there's nothing confirmed. But some of those things are, such as completely transforming the business rate system. And that's expected to come out. So we don't know the details of that yet, but in our next sector update, we'll be able to provide that. And the other one was around the Procurement Act. So that was brought into legislation by the previous government. It was due to be implemented by October by public bodies. However, that's now been deferred. Only last week, it's now been deferred till February in terms of an implementation date. And so that's a key piece that will change how you procure the openness and transparency of procurement for public institutions, but you now don't need to implement that till February. It's worth this committee noting that change. Other than that, I'm happy to take any questions on our progress report, whether it's progress of the plan or the individual reviews from members.
Yeah, thank you very much for that comprehensive report. I'll go first to Councillor Morgan.
Yes, thank you very much for the detail in here. I've just got a query on page 29 on our table regarding inspection certificates not being retained. When I look at the management response to that, obviously I think the inspections after works are done it is actually very important, and the record of those inspections. I'm not clear from the management response that they will be doing the inspections as such, or rather just seeking confirmation works will be finished. And I wondered if you were satisfied with that response, or whether perhaps we just need to be making it very clear that we do need to be inspecting the quality of work done, not just accepting that work's been done.
I'm happy to take that back to management in terms of the follow-up process. I'm not sure as part of the contract, and whether Richard may know, I'm not sure as part of the contract whether ultimately the inspection certificate received by E.ON as a competent, qualified organisation who can do that, and they provide that certificate, that is then deemed sufficient, or to what extent the authority then have to go out, if that's the question, if I've understood it, and to kind of inspect whether you're happy that what they've said in their inspection is correct. I can clarify what the position is and come back to this committee and to the chair outside of this, and once we've confirmed that. But what I will take away is to understand the answer to that question and to make sure that we follow it up, and if it is that the authority are meant to recheck E.ON's work as part of that, that we will make sure that that is part of what they do, because I think that is a reasonable thing to do if it's required of the authority.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Woolley, but first I'll come to Alison, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. To confirm, the Council do go out and inspect all works prior to the invoices being paid. What we've noted in 5B of the management response is that we retain a full audit trail of evidence that works have been completed prior to invoices being paid, which I think was the point that was raised here, that we hadn't got. It was the evidence that we weren't able to provide the evidence that the work had been completed. So that's what the full audit trail will provide going forwards. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Alison. Councillor Woolley.
Thank you. Mr Dooley, can you, on page 24, one of the low findings, the succession plan while in place has some gaps of information which should be completed and updated. And I think that you've been assured that that will happen by March 25. Is that a reasonable time scale, or is it quite long in your opinion, or quite short? I have no idea whether that's a reasonable offer to make to you.
Yeah, I think that's a valid question. Just on management responses in general, just to clarify for this committee's purposes, ultimately they are for management to own those dates and present them. We will critique and challenge if we think they are unreasonable, and if that was, obviously we'd bring it to committee's attention, but it's management who drive that. In this particular, and it's probably also worth saying, if it's a high or a medium, we're more likely to apply more challenge. When we consider it low, we're relatively happy with what management may put forward as a date and not challenge too much, given the significance is lower. In this particular case, whilst completing the document is quite straightforward to say, here's what we will do, actually some of the actions behind that may take longer. So if some of the actions may mean we need to train up somebody to make sure we've got a second person should that other individual leave, that may take longer. And I would assume in this particular circumstance that's what's driving the March date, but the actual completion of that and to update it won't take too long. But again, I can double check, but as it's a low, we're comfortable that that date is reasonable.
Councillor Shorrock.
It could be a risk with any authority, given our newness to the authority. Obviously, this is the first time we would have looked at something in this area, so it may be a question for Richard potentially, but obviously if we have a future review with procurement or contract management, that would be an area that we would look at. But obviously, given our newness, this is the first one we looked at. I don't have that wider view at this stage as to what KPIs are like on other contracts that the authority may have. I'm just looking at the audit plan. There may not necessarily be a review that's in our audit plan that would touch necessarily on contract management, looking at what's in the pipeline, but in our next year's plan, and no doubt we will look at procurement and contract management next year, given the Procurement Act coming into operation, but at this stage I can't offer more knowledge as we haven't looked into those areas as of yet.
Thank you again for that. Do we have any more questions for the auditors? Councillor Sharrock again.
I've got one more question, which really isn't for the auditors. One of the things which they identified was that a tenant liaison officer hadn't been appointed. Has that been appointed? Am I imagining that? I'm sure I saw something go out about that. No? Okay.
No, so for clarity, no, that hasn't been, not been appointed. Alison, sorry.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. But, this was raised by Audit, so the original team that was working on the SHDF bid was been fully replaced. So a TLO hasn't been appointed, but what we've assured is that we're going into wave 3 round of funding, and that will be a priority, because then you've got the officer that can liaise with the tenant prior to having any works completed, and can also liaise with them throughout the process. So we do recognise the importance of that role. We do have that role on the Earlsfield project, which works really positively both with the contractor and with our tenants. They both work really closely together. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
I'm just looking at the overall review of the works. I noticed that on page 20, homelessness we're part way through in that. Do we know when we'll be looking at reporting coming back to the committee with the outcome of that? Just understanding a time frame.
Yeah, the column, which is the third column on that page, where it says Audit Committee and it's got the dates, that's our estimate. So for that one, I think the next committee is on the 27th of November, so that's our estimate for when we'll be bringing that to this committee.
Thank you.
Councillor Lay.
There's been an invoice raised for committed spends, but it's not the actual spend. Is that something that we usually do? And the second thing is that I think it's a really good report. It's easy for us to read. It seems to be set out quite simply, which I found really good. So thank you very much for setting it out so that we can easily read it.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I fully heard the question on the invoice, sorry.
The first question was about the invoice for committed spends rather than actual spends. Is that something that we would usually do rather than the actual spend? It's on page 29 at the top. (3A).
I'd have to look into. I'm sorry, I'd have to look into. I think I see there's a hand over there that may be able to provide clarity on the management response.
Sorry, Alison, I didn't see your hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. The invoice had been raised for committed spend, but we asked E.ON to re-raise the invoice for actual spend, because, as you quite rightly say, we don't pay on committed spend. We only pay when works have been completed. Thank you.
Okay, on that note, this item is for noting. I'll thank the auditors for a comprehensive and easily readable report. Appreciate that. Thank you. We'll move on to item 5, the annual health and safety report. This report presents the annual health and safety report for 23-24. It provides an overview of South Kesteven District Council's management of health and safety. It will summarise progress made and areas of focus for the coming year. and identify the accident rates and types for this period. This report will also include the emergency planning and business continuity actions and plan for that same period. I'd like to go to Mr Swinton, please, to deliver this. Sorry, Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I can express my gratitude to Phil Swinton for the production of this very thorough and comprehensive report. And I may say that he gave it us in plenty of time, which was very much appreciated. It gave us time to look at it, to understand it, to have a meeting about it, and where necessary to amend it. So I'm grateful for that. And just before I go into a brief statement about it, can I add that the response to the flooding that we had from him and his team and lots of other people has been noted as being very, very, very positive, and we thank him and his team for that. Thank you. And I'd like to have to be recorded, please. This report provides an overview of the health and safety position for 23-24 and includes the business continuity and emergency planning update. The performance during this period showed a continued improvement in the quality of risk identification and control. This is based both in internal review and in the recent visit by the HSE Chemical Regulation Team. Health and safety is an area that requires constant vigilance to ensure that risk remains as low as possible. There is still work to do, examples of which are noted in the plans for 2024-25, but this is a very positive position. There has been an increase in the number of accident reports received in the year, from 38 to 83. Now, in isolation, this figure might be concerning and make the claim of improvement out of place. However, the increase in reporting should be seen very positively. A great deal of work has gone into training and informing officers on all aspects of accident reporting and investigation, which in turn has seen an increase in the quality and quantity of reports. Near-miss reporting has seen a significant increase. In fact, that's the biggest area of increase in the report. And ensuring a swift response to emergency situations is important. Near-miss reporting is very, very important in identifying and establishing areas of potential problems before they may occur. A key area of accident prevention is in near-miss reporting, and I'm pleased to see that it has been increased during the last 12 months. Business continuity remains closely linked to this work, and a full review of this, along with a programme of exercising an audit, is planned to ensure the Council is always looking for improvement and to strengthen its ability to respond to any given changes. And I would say once again that the very, very swift response to emergency situations was demonstrated during the response to the storms Babette and Hank. And I repeat that this was widely appreciated, and we thank them for it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Knowles. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Mr Swinton? No. Okay, do we have any questions? Councillor Woolley.
Thank you. Can I take you to the chart on the corporate responsibility training courses for 23-24? Just don't quite understand them. So let's take the first box for a start. The total of 43 people have been trained as fire wardens, are still trained as fire wardens, or is it a rolling number? Because it would imply from this, or I would take it from this, that there are 43 employees who are fire wardens at the time this report was written. Next one is likewise with the first aid, that number of 12 is the up-to-date figure. I'm just a little bit concerned because of the rollover and turnover of staff, how you account for somebody leaving the organisation who might have been trained or wasn't trained, and somebody coming in. And it's and very much the same with the, I don't know what the Cardenas PACE training is, But again, the point is, are those actual figures for when the report's printed, or just a snapshot of a point in time?
Thank you, Councillor. Apologies, we could have made it a little bit clearer, which I'll do for next year. So the fire warden training, much with the first aiders, they are trained and then they are trained and qualified for 3 years. So there is a rolling refresher period. So there are 43 fire wardens trained currently. So anyone trained in 23, they are trained up till 26. So that is an accurate current figure for now. The same with the first aiders. I would just need to double check, and then I'll come back to you on email. I believe that number of 12 will actually be relating more to the main officers. Obviously, we have officers within the satellite areas that are also trained. But I'll double check and confirm that for you. But that it is accurate, there are 12, but it might be that we have 1 or 2 more in a satellite area in other officers. So I'll confirm that. But yes, they are currently trained. That is the current position. And they have trained and qualified for 3 years before we then put them through a refresher period. In terms of succession, when officers leave, we are notified, and if they are in a certain role, we know that they're in that role, and then we would look to the service area to put forward another volunteer or volunteers within that to make sure that role is filled, because it's a statutory role that has to be completed there. On the Cardinals Pace training, that, I'm afraid, hands up, that is health and safety, talking health and safety. What that means, Cardinals is the system, so that is our display screen equipment, or DSE, training is online. It's provided through Cardinus. So that just shows you the progression of those that have taken it and those that maybe have a report outstanding in terms of their display screen. So they will have answered most of the questions. It might be that 1 or 2 are flagged up and just need a bit of a deeper look in terms of the ergonomics, but it's something we're required to do. So they are all undertaking it. But that's purely an online use of computers training package, if you like, in terms of their posture and the ergonomics that come with it.
Chairman, if I may, if you just indulge me for a moment. So, can I be assured then that those, let's just take the top box, that those 43 are a sufficient number for an annual, as far as this organisation is concerned? 43 is the right number to have, or is it more than that, or is it less than that, or, you know, I just don't quite get how many you need to make sure that we're in a safe situation. Thank you.
Thank you. So, in terms of fire wardens, we're probably over the number we would need. We have more, but we have built that in because we have the flexible agile working, so we needed more than that. For a building, if we take this building, for example, if we were going to have 2, if we needed to man it and have fire wardens, or staff it, sorry, we would want 1 on each floor. So you would need no more than 1 on each floor. The same with the picture house, we have 2. For a building, if we take the depot, for example, the waste depot or the CCTV building, it's a single floor with limited number of buildings, so 1 fire warden there is able to manage it. So as long as each building, these being the exception, every other building needs 1. So we'd probably need, if you wanted to look at it, 20 to 25. So the fact that we have 43, we have in excess of what we need, and we are actually adding a few more to that because we have discovered that home working, agile working, and the demands of work mean that staff are taking out more, but it's a role that we need to ensure we can fill. So we are above what we would need on that. Also, in terms of first aid, I would suggest that that is a good number. We are comfortable with that. We would like 1 or 2 more from a resilience point of view, and we are going out for volunteers at the minute to increase that number, but that is a sufficient number at the minute based on the risk we face within our buildings and the first aid needs assessment that we undertake.
Thank you for that response and clarification there. It's refreshing to know that we've got the cover there should be needed. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you. It's touching on the same area as Councillor Willie's question, actually, but digging a bit deeper. Although we have the numbers, we've got the requirements as you identify per floor. Have we actually, though, matched those to the requirements, for example, of each of the committees and when they're running? I've had a meeting this morning with some of our planning officers, for example. Planning committee in particular has quite a high number of members of the public tending to come to that. And what we discussed was actually that there is no planning officer as such designated to be a fire warden. we couldn't be sure that actually every planning meeting we have someone. We did discuss a potential solution to it. Perhaps Democratic Services Officers doing that role because you're at every meeting, and it might just be a case of communicating that out if they're, so we all know that is the case. So just wanted to check that. Thank you.
So Graham will probably know the people far better than I do, but there are a number of people within the team who are trained as first aiders and fire wardens, and again, people from IT. So I can look at the specifics and who was actually here, but I'd be surprised if we hadn't had somebody who had the qualification and training. I think Amy is certainly one of them that are actually qualified and trained. And in terms of the numbers, up to, and I will double check, but from memory I believe up to 50 people, you would only require one person with emergency first aid at work training, which we have. So as long as we haven't gone above 50 when we've had those meetings, we have sufficient cover.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Just sort of going a little further, given the amount of home working, does the responsibility of the council towards employers extend to the time when they're working at home in these respects?
Sorry, in terms of first aid or
well, in fact, both health and safety and first aid.
Yes, so it does. So we have actually developed during COVID. There's a form sent out for home workers to assess their home working station and to checks and balances against it. So are they working in the right condition? And the new system we use, the cardinal system we talk about, actually is more intuitive than the last one. It has an option where they can select whether they are a home worker, an office worker or a mix, and it will take them down a different route, give them different prompts and sets of information for their work environment and how they can set up their workstation safely. So it does, obviously we are limited in the fact that if you have 200 officers working from home, it's going to be very difficult to visit all 200 officers and check all of that, but there are systems in place that provide the information for staff to do that, and it's actually something that in the next 2 to 3 months we'll send out again and refresh, and we'll ask all those that are home workers. And by home we would normally look at anyone who's doing more than 2 to 3 days a week at home. We would class them more of a home and agile worker. So that will be sent out to all the managers again, asking them to make sure they are completed and then brought back in to see if there are any problems in the home environment we can help.
Just for one further question, is there a responsibility, it seems a bit extreme, but say an employee, a council employee was at home working on a full-time basis, or pretty full-time, and they had an accident at home. Does our responsibility extend to that? Falling down the stairs, tripping over the carpet, scalded by hot water? Seriously?
I was only smiling because myself and Tracy Elliott, we'd had this conversation a while ago, where I think there were some test cases in America though. No. It would be highly unlikely. I wouldn't want to say an absolute blanket without having all the facts. We don't do that. But it would be highly, highly unlikely. There may be certain requirements that if somebody is working at home full time that we would need to provide them with additional equipment. Say, for example, if a better chair, a DSE, sort of more suitable DSE chair, if they didn't have one. So there may be certain requirements in that sense. But if they were to trip over something in their house, the carpet, or fall down the stairs, then no. But just because that is their workplace or where they are working, because they're working from home, I don't think the council can be held liable for the condition of their house.
Thank you for that. Councillor Shorrock.
Thank you. Yeah, this is really interesting. I like this sort of stuff. Can I take you back to the report, the comparisons by accident type, which is page 52. One of the things which has been talked about already is near misses being reported more, which is good. But I'm looking at the column for 22-23, where slips, trips and falls were at 8%, and this year they're at 40%. There's been a significant increase in slip, trips and falls, which appears to be in arts and culture. Yeah, and I presume that's the leisure centres. No. Right, okay. So that's a significant increase. So the question is that because there has been an actual increase in the number of slips, trips and falls reported as compared to 22-23, or is it through your own inspections that they weren't being reported properly in the previous year? That's really what I'm getting to.
So yes, it's in the arts centres, and I think it's probably a combination. I think it's that we're getting a better level of and better quality of reporting, and people are more clear about what to report. The reason you've seen such an increase, and does it just say in the report, 23 of those are all members of the public or people that have actually been part of the performing companies of the theatre groups who have, in several cases, tripped over their own equipment. Because it's happened on our site, the staff are more aware of it now. So even though we looked at all of these, there is no fault in terms of the premise or the suitability or the condition of the building. We have investigated them. We have still recorded and reported them because they've happened on our site, on our watch, so that we then have evidence and audit trail that we have looked into the incident. But they were all, like I say, members of the public. In some cases, children running around, jumping down more steps than they needed to instead of taking them all, and like I say, 2 or 3 of them were theatre companies actually tripping over their own equipment. So that's the reason we've seen such an increase. It's not a huge increase in terms of actual slips and trips of the council, it's members of the public in the art centres.
Thank you. Councillor Stokes.
Thank you. One of those questions has just gone now with the 23 accidents. First of all, I would also like to second what Councillor Knowles said. Phil, I think this is an excellent report. I think the progress on health and safety is fantastic, and you've done an amazing job in taking this forward. I was going to mention the 23, but what I will say, there's also on page 6 of 15 where the comment was just made about the near-miss reporting from last year, almost 4 times. How do you must get some that are probably not genuine, or not quite genuine, but how do you decipher between really or what, or do you just take everything on its face value?
I'm not sure how to answer that one without offending somebody. So we will take every accident. We will investigate every accident on its merits. We will, not just me, I've got a team behind me, I've got an excellent deputy as well. So we will look at the information and the facts. There are times when we'll look at it and things don't ring true. It might be it's been over-egged or something has been hidden. Equally, we can normally tell. With the near misses, it's odd. We've actually been quite fortunate. When we've looked at them, they actually ring true. They make sense. Full disclosure, one of them was actually seen by the health and safety team, which is why it's in there, but it was recorded. But no, they've appeared quite genuine at the front, and it is really nice to see, because as I've said, that is a huge indicator to things that may be working not as well as they should, and it really does prompt. And it's the one area where I think we were absolutely under-reporting. It's still a low number, I think, given the services we operate, but it shows, I think, progress. We'll continue to push that message and push the training, and hopefully continue to see the numbers go up.
Thank you for that. So, okay, I've got Councillor Morgan, but I'm first going to go to Councillor Baxter, please.
Thank you. It's just a note too, in light of Councillor Sharpe's question, to draw Councillors' attention to page 55 of the agenda, or page 12 of 15, which relates to leisure centre accidents, which are they're not included within the SK total, but they do represent a lot of accidents, although a low percentage compared to the number of people who use the leisure centres.
Thank you for that. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. I just wanted, when we do our fire safety training, do we also include how to deal with a bomb scare? Because it's a completely different procedure. I just wondered if we include that, so our wardens are all trained on bomb scares as well as fire safety. And then I note, just really for commenting or noting, is on page 56, we've got quite a significant number of staff days lost as a result of accidents still. What I think is quite interesting, though, is if you compare 23-24 with 21-22, we had 40 accidents in 21-22 with 169 days lost. We had double the number in 23-24, but actually had, but we've got fewer days off. So I'm just wondering what that might be. Is it because the figure's high, perhaps somebody had quite a serious injury or something like that?
Okay, so if I take the bomb one first, so the fire warden training is specific to fire warden training and the evacuation in a fire. The council does have a completely separate suspect package bomb process and procedure that is in existence, which staff are aware of. Certainly from a customer services point of view, obviously we've worked with them initially on the development, and it's something that with the new centre being brought in and a few other changes to regulation that we're working with. In fact, we were there this morning talking about a few other issues, so we'll be looking at that to try and update it, but there is a separate procedure document for suspect package and evacuation in existence. So the fire warden training is specific to fire warden training. The training on dealing with a suspect package is different, but it is documented.
Based on that, how many people have actually been trained as opposed to having a policy document on what's doing if there's a bomb scare? So
we don't at present deliver specifically any of that training because of the bomb there is a process. It's a very straightforward document which is given. We don't deliver that into the team. That is made available. That is one of the documents that we provide as a corporate team, as those are the suite of arrangements for managers so that they have that information. So we aren't personally delivering that type of information, but based on your question, it's something that we can take forward to work closely with managers. We do. There's a number of documents that we actually provide for managers. We obviously, within the team, it would be impossible for us to then teach and train every single service area on every single document, but we can certainly look at that and maybe take that one forward. It might help to know we are actually, the council does have a working group now looking towards the potential of marketing law changes over the EVAC and INVAC situation, so it may well develop naturally from that and it becomes a process that the team take on. But currently, right now, the document is provided, but we don't go in and train and talk to everybody about that because it's there for them to read and disseminate.
Okay, thank you for that. So this report is for noting. Consider it duly noted, and I'd like to echo Councillor Knowles' commendation of Mr Swinton and our response teams in particular. I personally as well think this was a fantastic report, Phil. Thank you very much. If we can move on now to item 6, the strategic risk register, and I'll go back to Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I preface my remarks with our thanks to Tracy for the report that she has provided. Thanks very much indeed. The register has been revised and updated, and the committee is asked to approve it. One of the key areas for Governance and Audit Committee, as part of its terms of reference, is to monitor and review the risk management arrangements in place and the activities that are being undertaken to mitigate those risks. In accordance with Governance and Audit Committee's work plan, the Strategic Risk Register is presented to committee twice a year. It was last presented in March of this year, so it's the second time this year that a risk register has been submitted. The risk is split into 15 different risk areas, each with 6, 7, 8 different identified risks within that group. Of the 15 risk areas, the judgment is that the risk is effectively being managed, partially effective or not effective. Of the 15 risk areas, 11 are classified as fully effective, 4 as partially effective and none as not effective. The items that are partially effective, there is one item out of half a dozen in section 5, another single item in section 6, virtually all the items in section 7, which is digital transformation, and about half the items in section 8, which is partnership and collaboration, are partially effective. That clearly identifies areas that need attention going forward. I commend the report to you and ask you to give it your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Knowles. I'll throw that open to the committee. Is there anybody who has a question? Yeah, okay. If we could bring in Matt Humphrey to talk about how the workshop was done, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm Matt Humphrey from RSM. I think we've met before when we were putting together originally the Strategic Risk Register, which has been referred to in this document, the 15 risks. Just a quick comment. We have to bear in mind these are the risks that the Council deems most important with regards to the achievement of its objectives. If these risks are not managed, then in effect we're going to spend a lot of time firefighting and dealing with issues and not committed to achievement of objectives. We must keep that in mind. As been referenced already, we did an exercise following the identification of those 15 strategic risks to build up the control environment that existed within the Council to understand what that looked like. We did that working alongside the CMT and Assistant Directors in a facilitated session. We took that further and we undertook an assessment of the control environment based on cumulative knowledge and experience of the participants in the workshop, and led to the conclusion that Councillor Knowles has just provided, which is, are the controls effective, partially effective, not effective, or we don't know. When we take into account the effectiveness of control, there's three components we consider, and this is what I challenged and tasked the CMT and the Assistant Director to do, was to consider whether the control existed, whether it was consistently applied, and did it achieve what it was meant to achieve. And that's what led to the conclusions in all cases. All CMT members participated. We ran a questionnaire beforehand which provided for an initial assessment of the controls in order that all members who participated in the workshop could put their views forward. And we then drew that information together to have a roundtable conversation around the controls, with me facilitating that and providing check and challenge. The risks themselves are, as I say, strategic, so have material impact on the Council's objectives, and if they were to occur, there'll either be a loss or lost opportunity. We bear that in mind. What it led to was a judgment of the control environment and the actions that you can see now captured in the risk register, which are at quite a macro level. I'll make an observation listening to what's been said today. It's really interesting to hear some of the recommendations or suggestions by internal audit, some of the things that have come out of the health and safety report, and some of the things that have been suggested there and talked in this committee are all reflected largely through this strategic risk register in the macro actions. Having the strategic risk register and being used in this way, my final observation and comment, by CMT is really important, because otherwise you're reliant on very different, separate sources of assurance being brought to this committee. The strategic risk register draws all these elements together to ensure that you get a more holistic view of risk and control. So that's why it's really important and part of the requirements and what's incumbent on those charged with governance. So I think I've probably said enough there. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions along with Tracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that and all the work that you've put into that. Do we have any questions from the committee? Councillor Lay.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, for the partially effective parts of it, do we have time frames on when they're actually going to be deemed effective? There's always room for improvement and on anything. And there's not many that needs to be updated to effective. But if you could just let me know of when that's likely to be at all, please, if you can. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Lay, thanks for that. I'm going to be still talking to the CMT to confirm the dates of the action completion. But I was just going to say, I would imagine most of these actions are now progressing and potentially being viewed for completion by the end of this financial year, in order that the control environment will be fully effective by that date. As I say, it's a work in progress, as risk always is with the CMT. I don't think I've said anything untoward there or committed anybody to anything that they shouldn't do, but I'll continue to, let's say, facilitate that conversation with them.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? If not, can I get a proposal that we accept this updated and revised strategic risks? Councillor Morgan, are you proposing? Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Stevens, thank you. And then if we could get a vote on this, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you. And we move on to item 7, the Treasury Management Activity Updates. I'll go to Mr Wiles.
I think Councillor Baxter is going to introduce the report, Mr Chairman.
Sorry, Councillor Baxter.
No offence taken. Thank you. This Treasury Management report is the first monitoring report for the current financial year and is up to the end of June 2024. It's undertaken in accordance with the strategy approved by Council on the 29th of February this year. The following areas are covered by the report: a review of debt management operations, a review of investment operations, and an update on Treasury Management Strategy Prudential Code indicators. No additional borrowing was undertaken during the first quarter, and the advice continues to be that if there is a borrowing need, then internal borrowing from cash balances should be undertaken to avoid incurring unnecessary external borrowing costs. As at 30th of June this year, the Council had short-term investments of £71 million. A schedule of investments is included in Appendix A, and I'm pleased to see there's nothing left in Qatar. Prudential indicators specific to Treasury Management are designed to ensure that Treasury Management is carried out in accordance with professional practice, and the indicators for next year, the following year and the year after were approved by Council in February as part of the Treasury Management Strategy. The indicators and actual figures for the months to June 24 are set out in Appendix A, and I can confirm that all investment activity has been maintained within the indicator limits.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions? Councillor Morgan.
We had an indication from full council that we would be looking at moving forward in a more ethical way regarding investments, etc. I wonder if that has had any ramifications or impacts regarding our overall position here or not.
Thank you. Mr Wiles coming back on that?
Yeah, the strategy approved by Council includes what we call it ESG, which is Environment, Social and Governance Arrangements. So all our investment decisions have a criteria built into them, which is around the ESG compliance of the various institutions. The most obvious one in the listing on Appendix A is the Standard Charter, which is a wholly sustainable investor, and that accounts for 12% of our portfolio, £9 million. We strive not to go anything lower than 10% of our overall investment in a wholly sustainable institution, but as I say, we're guided by our link or our Treasury advisors as to where we can place monies and make sure they are safe and resilient, but the ethical kind of framework is built within our decision making going forward anyway, in line with Council decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions on that? Okay, this report is for noting and approving. Sorry, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. Just a note on that, I did meet with Alicia Cairns last week to talk about various things, and we talked about ethical procurement and the potential for increasing our ethical procurement credentials, I guess, through the forthcoming Procurement Act that she had contributed to. I'm obviously grateful to her for the conversation about it, but I'm not an expert in the forthcoming Procurement Act. It is my hope that it will make every local authority more ethical. I'd also say thank you to Councillor Shorrock, who originally raised this question I think in full council, and I'm glad that we're still talking about and keeping our eye on it. Our eyes are definitely on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So if we can just take a show of hands for approving this, please. Thank you, that's unanimous. Item number 8, there's proposed amendments to the Council's Constitution. There's a few things, there's one thing I want to add into here, but the method of voting at public meetings. So I'm going to propose that we adjourn the live feed at the moment in order that because there may be some of you that haven't seen the demonstration of what we're going to do, and we'll get Gary from IT to go through a demonstration for everybody so that we can discuss this properly, if that's okay. Everybody happy with an adjournment? Thank you. So if you can do that, please, Josh. Okay, welcome viewers back. And Councillor Woolley.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Knowles, yes.
Thank you, Chair. As you see, it's a proposal in the Constitution doesn't include a sentence which allows for voting by the machine. And the only change to the Constitution is an addition of 3 lines, which if you look at your copy at 3.3, it's in heavy black print. And that will say the extra that is being added to the Constitution to allow, in certain circumstances, for the vote to be taken by the recorded vote that you've just trialled. And that's the only change in the Constitution, because it's not allowed for in the current writing of it, and that would be the inclusion in order to make it constitutionally correct. Is that right, Graham? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Knowles. Councillor Woolley.
Thank you. Can you just explain to me how I'm all for openness and transparency, and I'm not certain that this system actually allows the public to see exactly what's going on and the way that certain people have voted. So, for example, you know, obviously if we have a packed public gallery and a vote's taken, do we get the names up as to who's voted for and who's voted against straight after, or is it just 4, 10 against 11 or whatever? Because I'm very, very concerned that, particularly when you get let's take a very emotive subject where residents want to see how someone has voted. My residents want to see how Sue Woolley voted about the jacket business, so that I can then tell them why I voted the way that I did. They're not going to know that. They're not going to be able to challenge me. Can I have a bit of reassurance?
Thank you, Councillor Woolley. If I can come back to Gary on that, please.
Yeah, so you're right. On the screen, when it's live, you won't see who's voted what by default. That information is held in the background if you do an open vote, and obviously, again, I defer to Graham on that, but that could be published or whatever you want to do with that information. So it could be made available. We could put it up on the screen, I suppose. You know, again, I don't know how much you want to be changing screens during the meeting, but it could go up on the screen as to how people have voted, and you could show that. I would also mention that obviously at the minute you vote by show of hands, and on the recording it's showing the chairman, so actually if you're not in the meeting you can't see who's voted what anyway, unless you're actually a member of the public that's in here, because obviously the camera, normally the chairman calls the vote and the camera's on them at the time. But yes, we can show it after, if, you know, say it is recorded, so you can use that information how you wish. That's obviously not my decision, but it is there if someone wants it.
Thank you for that, Gary. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, at the moment, I entirely understand your point. If I'd driven from the Deepings to the chamber to see how people voted on a particular issue, I would want to know how people voted on a particular issue. We used to have this system in place, and it was removed because other councillors wanted to see how people were voting on a particular issue. Under this system, you could do the both together. You could say, press your buttons and put your hands up, so that we've got an idea. At the moment, we put our hands up, and Graham and Karen are under pressure to kind of, is it 17, is it 18, is it 16, is it 14? But this would be definitive, and it would first of all, it would give a definitive result of how many councillors have pressed that button, and also, if we wanted to, we could release the details of the vote. So if the Grantham Journal or Mr Jones of Long Bennington wanted to know how their individual councillor had voted, we could publish it, and I think we should. But for me, nearly every vote should be recorded in such a fashion so that people can see how people vote on every issue. There are some things like voting through the minutes or should we have a tea break that obviously don't matter. But when we get to things like the motions, for example, or issues of magnitude, this is a way where we can have the votes recorded without having to have a formal, laborious recorded vote. Does that make sense?
Thank you for that, Councillor Baxter. I've got two waiting. Councillor Morgan first, and then Councillor Shorrock.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I do pick up Councillor Woodley's point about the transparency of raising your hand and voting that way. But equally, I can see Councillor Baxter's point, especially when it's full council. You're trying desperately to work out how many, especially if it's quite close. Then you may have to recount, actually. My question, though, is actually around that, because when we look at the first paragraph on page 92.1, it implies we're talking about voting at all council meetings, all meetings. But then when we talk about the amendment to Constitution 3.3, it's specifically referring to full council. So are we saying we would only use this actually at full council, or are we saying we would apply this to all meetings? Because Councillor Baxter just made a point about all votes being recorded. So where are we talking about applying it? Just want to understand that.
Well, no, if you read 3.3, Councillor Morgan, down, it does go further into the bold type, saying that the person presiding the meeting will determine the most appropriate means of facilitating the votes, and it's given that position to chairman. My point on that, good point that you raised, but my point on that is, do we feel that this remit should be the remit of the chair, or should it be a blanket decision by full council that everything is done this way, or not? You know, do we feel that we can have it in some committees and not others, or what? You know, this is one I would like you to discuss. Sorry, if I can go to Mr. Watt.
Sorry, just to confirm, so that is in council procedure rules, but earlier on in council procedure rules, it mentions that actually certain rules apply to committees as well, and that's one of them. So the way in which the voting is undertaken. So as much as it references full council, it also does mean that it's used at committees as well as full council meetings.
Councillor Shorrock.
I think there's a distinction, isn't there, between having a recorded vote, which I think is in the standing orders, to request a recorded vote, which would then list all the names, and having a vote for purely, just to get the numbers, for purely administrative purposes, which that was doing, because it just speeds things up. So it makes complete sense. So I think there's two issues being talked about here, which goes to the fundamental heart of voting and transparency and accountability, which is, should all votes be recorded? Right, we've got the technology to do it, we can put everybody's names down, right, that may be the issue which is the heart of this. Now this has got to go back to council, so maybe there's a potential amendment there to say, right, okay, let's just make it really straightforward and simple, and every vote that we have, the name of that person is recorded in terms of how they vote, and then it will stop the problem for the chair in terms of having to make a decision about whether we go to a recorded vote or not. I, for one, would push for a recorded vote, and that will slow the process up, because you don't have to go through that process of me probably finding enough people, councillors, to back me, right? But then we'd have to have a debate about that and so on. So I was never quite sure why it got removed, right, in the first place, because that used to exist. So, it's about whether we actually go back to that system.
Thank you for that, Councillor Shorrock. Councillor Stevens.
I should know the answer already, but surely the recording of votes or the publication of the way councillors have voted should only be available to the public when the public can attend the meetings. And obviously they can attend the full council. Can they attend all the committee meetings? Oh, well, I shouldn't ask the question. Sorry about that.
Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, in answer to Councillor Stevens' comment, the meetings are not only available to the public who turn up to the chamber, but they're also being broadcast as we are now online. Certainly they are. There are some meetings which are more popular than others, but some of the contentious meetings about the leisure centres, for example, more than 1,000 people viewed, and hundreds of people were viewing at the time that it was taking place, which, if you live a long way from Grantham, or if you're not able to get into it, I mean, people were sitting at work with the meeting going on in the background. So, addressing Councillor Shorrock's point, I think there's a useful alteration, not for me to tell your committee what to suggest, but when it says proposed at any meeting of full council, perhaps that should be any meeting of the council, which would mean that there was clarity around whether or not it applied to planning committee and so on. And I think planning committee is one place where it might be interesting. But there are actually three methods of voting if you go ahead with this, or if we go ahead with this. We've got show of hands, so approve the minutes, show of hands, get on with it. That's much less than 15 seconds. There's the electronic voting system, which during the adjournment we showed was about 15 seconds. And then there's also a formal recorded vote, which is getting on for 3 or 4 minutes, where we all stand up one at a time and our vote is recorded. And I think, yeah, so for the budget, we are obliged to have a formal recorded vote. Whether or not you can measure two, I don't know. Certainly, this system makes it more possible to have a recording of each vote. I'd say that there's a couple of cases where it would be inappropriate, or it might not be appropriate to have a full recorded vote. And the two examples I'd put up, not wanting to prolong the debate, but the two examples I'd give where it might not be sensible for the public and other councillors to know how each individual councillor voted. First of all, the chair of the council, because that should be a completely independent, non-political post, and so people should be able to vote for that person or not vote for that person without fear of being told off. The second is when there is a particularly contentious issue, and I recall a meeting that we had about fox hunting, where there was a lot of fear of intimidation and accusations of intimidation and so on, and people might feel intimidated into voting one way or the other. So that might be also a place for a secret ballot. But as has been said by Gary, this system can facilitate an electronic vote without a recorded ballot. Apologies if I've gone on too long.
Thank you for that, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Morgan.
I mean, I was in two minds about this, but I do think the point being made now that we have moved on, and there are so many people who do now watch the meetings online, the fact that you can then, that members of the public can retrospectively go back and check how the person they elected has voted, potentially key matters that may not even be at that meeting, but they could retrospectively go back and have a look, I think is actually very important. So, yeah, I would support this. I'm just a bit slightly concerned about members do have a habit of moving around where we sit, and I just think we need to instill then, if we've got some real discipline, that's where you're sitting. You're not doing a shunt around 2 minutes before the meeting starts, because I know that can happen. How long does it actually take to set up, just in case there's a legitimate reason that someone has to move?
Gary, would you like to come back on that?
Yeah, so the labelling of the microphones is second. So, and I know when we have full council, sometimes Lucy sat there, she'll see people in a different seat and she'll relabel the mic because she can see you're there. Obviously, disabling is slightly different. So it will, if you vote whatever's labelled, it'll come up for you. So obviously if it's a vote from someone who's not here, that will show up as an anomaly. I don't know what, hopefully nobody will be pressing all the people's buttons, but so actually labelling where you're sat at the start of the meeting is fairly easy. It's a case of, if you want to go as far as disabling desks when nobody's sat at, that's obviously slightly bigger, and obviously might cause a delay, I suppose, at the start of the meeting if you wanted to start disabling mics to make sure they definitely can't be used.
Okay, Councillor Morgan, thank you.
It's a scenario, because if you think about it, full council, for example, normally I'm, as I noticed on now, I'm on the back row, but during planning, I'm sitting up there, and the same thing applies to members move around. Does it matter? Can you have one person, going back to your disabling thing, would you have to disable everybody at the back before you could properly record where they're actually sitting, or does it allow you to have someone in more than one place at a time?
Yeah, so the way the meetings are, we've got layouts for each type of committee. So full council, obviously we know where people roughly sit. In planning and obviously meetings like this, they're completely different layouts. So yeah, we've got a layout per committee type, and then obviously any adjustments should be minor adjustments for that committee, a substitute councillor or something like that. But yeah, in full council, you're right, you're sat there. In other meetings, you're sat there, and it caters for that because they'll load the layout up for the relevant committee at the start.
Thank you for that. Any more questions? Councillor Woolley.
If I could just come back on something that Councillor Baxter has said. You gave two examples of where you didn't think it would be appropriate for from a voting point of view. Who's going to make that decision as to whether another item is contentious or could put somebody in an unsafe position, because your idea of unsafe and my idea of unsafe might be different, it might not, but it's that, where do we get the consistency from?
Thank you for that, Councillor Woolley. Councillor Baxter, do you have an answer for that one?
Can I simply the Chair's decision on any item of the Council is final, and they make a decision. And obviously people can challenge it, but then he makes a decision, or she makes the decision, and that decision is final. So that's one of the responsibilities of the Chair. So with the Chair.
Councillor Shorrock.
Up to a point, I agree with that. There is actually, if you've got a default position, right, and the normal position would be that votes are recorded in council, people's names are listed. That's the default position. If somebody wants to argue that something is so sensitive, right, and could have the effect of creating a toxic response to that individual, then they can basically go to the chair and ask that, but it needs to be decided by council. The democratic decision-making process has to rest with all the members of council. So the normal process would be, and I think it's already there, and Graham can advise, is that you would put a request in for a secret ballot, okay, and that's moved, and if council votes for that secret ballot, that's the way it would be done, in that kind of way. I'm really reluctant to be giving chairs that kind of power, particularly over political matters, because these will be political issues. As well, so it really needs to go back to the members, and that can be done through moving that particular procedural motion, I think it is, as well.
Mr Watts, do you want to come back on that one for me?
Yeah, that's right. So at the moment, the default position is show of hands. So if members had that same reluctance to show the way that they wanted to vote because it was a sensitive item, then that request would be put in to effectively suspend standing orders to allow a secret ballot to take place. So yeah, the default at the moment is show of hands. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. I can't see that. I understand where Councillor Shorrock's coming from, and normally would agree, but there are some committees like planning, which Councillor Baxter quite rightly picked up on. That's we have sometimes every month we have at least one meeting. This coming month we've got two. And what the agenda items could determine and the sort of public response we get to public consultation regarding any application may determine whether or not there could be an issue. You would not be therefore looking at that waiting for full council to decide which way or whether or not we suspend orders on that. So I think maybe it's true for perhaps some committees, but I think certainly we might need to accept that certain committees actually, maybe licensing might be another one, where it's appropriate actually we allow the chair to make the decision. But I think that obviously have a default. I quite like that idea. The default position is we would show, but someone has the ability to come forward and say this could be a real problem. I have to say, speaking personally, the only time I've ever had any real issue as a councillor was around what I thought was a minor planning matter, and I had a fist in my face. So, you know, these are real concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Morgan. So I think what we're all agreed, I think everybody in principle, that this voting system is the way forward. It's how we word our recommendation to full council. So does anybody have any ideas on wording that recommendation? Councillor Knowles.
As this is going forward, I propose that Graham takes regard of what has been said here and finds the right words, or tries to find the right words for the council meeting as and when it comes up. It's not at the council meeting, clearly on Thursday, so we'll have a little bit of time to try and find the right set of words which meet the needs of what's been said, and that's what he's there for, monitor officer, is to try and convert what we're saying now into the appropriate language for the council meeting as and when it comes forward.
That's correct, but I struggle with that we're supposed to approve that now and then be given the words that we've approved afterwards. So I would like, if Graham could possibly just put something together. Sorry? How would the committee feel about that? That we approve it and that Mr Watts works in consultation with the Cabinet member and myself and the Vice Chair as well when she's back, and that you're happy with us to do that moving forward, or do you have other proposals? Councillor Baxter.
I'm not on this committee, so I don't know to what extent I get involved. I mean, I would certainly ask you to consider replacing the word full with the, and then the rest of it is, I think the principle of, so the wording, or by using the electronic voting system in the council chamber, that doesn't seem contentious. The contentious bit is the person presiding the meeting. Interesting avoidance of the use of the word chair, chairman or chairperson there. But the person providing the meeting will determine the most appropriate means. If that's the contentious part, then I think at some point, in the same way as we have to trust that councillors are not going to try and sneakily press their neighbour's button in order to introduce them, there's got to be some trust in there somewhere. And if the person presiding the meeting was not acting in a way that was appropriate to the meeting, then I'd say the meeting should get rid of the chair, and there is a process for that also. I mean, the chair does come with a responsibility, and I think that we have to have some confidence in that person, and if that person is not reading the room, then there is a different problem.
Thank you for that, Councillor Baxter. I agree with you that it is the chair's position to be mindful of everything that's going on and to be apolitical. But my question still remains to this committee: do you feel that the remit should be the remit of the chair, or that it should be a blanket decision by full council? And to echo what Councillor Baxter says, the people that are chairs are there for a reason. So do we put that trust in the chairs and the vice chairs? Councillor Stokes.
Yeah, I do. That's what I would say.
Councillor Morgan.
I think it should, I'd support this, and I think it should be the decision of the chair.
Is anybody against that, the decision of the Chair? Councillor Woolley?
Yes, I am. I can't accept that the Chair would make that decision. I can't see how it cannot end up becoming political.
Duly noted. Councillor Woolley. Councillor Shorrock?
Yeah, I'm against that power being with the Chair as well. I've come up with a form of words which to amend the amendment. And what I would do is I would take out where it says when it's proposed that any meeting of council shall be taken by means of show of hands. That would be removed, and it will say any vote council and council meetings shall be taken by using the electronic voting system. Members shall vote for, against or abstain, and the names of members shall be duly recorded. Full stop. Yeah, recorded, yeah. And basically, if people don't want that, then they would have to challenge that default position.
Councillor Morgan.
I would like to suggest that we go to a vote on the standing proposal before us, and if that's lost, then revisit this.
Councillor Morgan, so you're making that as a proposal that we allow the chairs?
Yes, I'm accepting Councillor Baxter's proposal to change the wording of full council to the council, including making that amendment to this.
Okay, Councillor Stevens, before I see if we've got a seconder to that proposal. Councillor Stevens.
Going to Councillor Shorrock's statement then, I completely agree with what he said. We've got a perfectly satisfactory electronic system. It records all the information that anyone could possibly want. Let's use it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. So I've got a proposal on the table. Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Stokes. Councillor Morgan's made the proposal. I've got a seconder for that. If that's not gone through, then we'll go with Councillor Shorrock's and see if we can get a seconder for that. So we can have a show of hands for Councillor Morgan's proposal. And a show of hands against. That's left down to me then. I've got to be honest, I do, even though I'm a chair, I do have a slight issue with that, but I have also got to err on the side, what Councillor Baxter said, that we put these chairs in a position that they will do the right thing. So I'm going to go for that initially. I don't know, can we put a trial period on this? Is there anything we can do with that, Mr. Watts? Yeah, good point. Okay, so we'll recommend initially then. I will go with that. That we recommend initially that it's for the chairs to make the decision. So that's duly passed then. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Then while we're on item 8, it's become apparent today with a discussion with Mr. Watts, so this is an addition to the thing about something that's going to come on any other business. I'd like to make a proposal that we change the terms on the G&A committee, or we recommend the terms being changed on the G&A committee, in that voting rights of a co-opted member, an external co-opted member, are consistent with the 1989 Act. So currently, a co-opted member onto this committee has voting rights, but under the 1989 Act, the decisions of our committee in particular are required to make would preclude a co-opted member from having voting rights on that. If I can hand over to Mr Watts to explain far more eloquently than I can.
Thank you, Chairman. So in Article 9, paragraph 9.2 of the membership of this committee, it gives this committee the opportunity to appoint an external appointee as a co-opted member, and it states in that article that that person would have voting rights. But as the Chairman has said, the remit of this committee and the decisions this committee can take, the 1989 Act does not allow for independent persons who are external co-optees to take those decisions. So that element of the terms of reference for this committee just needs to be amended so that person does not have voting rights should this committee wish to appoint an external co-optee onto the committee. So that is what I would propose you, or recommend that you propose to full council in relation to an amendment to the Constitution in that regard. Thank you.
So in that, I'm making that proposal. Does anybody have any questions on that, or can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Morgan, seconded. Can we take a vote on that then, please? Thank you for that. Moving on to item 9 now. I'm going to ask Councillor Knowles to make a little statement first, and then I'm afraid we'll have to ask him to just leave the room for a short while.
Thank you, Chair. I'm unhappy with the idea that I need to recommend myself to you for a post on Leisure SK. I'm very unhappy to be doing so, and I did a CV that was far too long and in most parts irrelevant to what you're considering. I was not happy with that. I think the only person that should be consulted about this is the Chair of Leisure SK. And any question of whether I have made a contribution in the last 6 months shouldn't be addressed to me, because I say, of course I have, but, you know, it should be addressed to her. And it's her decision whether she wants to continue with me on that committee, or whether she thinks I make a contribution in the last 6 months, whether she thinks I can make a contribution in the next 6 months and beyond. I think the only person who should be recommending this should be that chair of that committee. And I even have concerns about this committee having made the decision at the end of the day. It's her decision. It's her director that she wants on. She should choose the ones, or have a great say, at least, in choosing the people she wants to be alongside her on that board. And with that, I would leave you. Self-recommendation is no recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. Mr Watts, if we can just give Councillor Knowles a second to leave.
It doesn't make it relevant to the point that was made, but I just want to make the point, it's not about self-recommendation. This committee's remit gives it the authority to appoint directors to council-owned companies. In previous reports where there hasn't been any information about any of the appointees that have been recommended, there's been criticism that we haven't had sufficient information to make a decision at this committee. So anyone that's recommended or identified that they wish to be appointed onto a council-owned company, it's common practice now that we provide a bit of a pen portrait so that the committee's actually got some information about their experience, their skills, their areas of expertise, so that it's an informed decision that the committee is taking. So it's on that basis that each person has been asked to provide some information that may help the committee in reaching its decision as to whether or not they wish to appoint them permanently onto the company. So it's that basis that the information has been requested and provided, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Watts. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much. I have actually read the details of the vote before us. First of all, I would like to say... Sorry.
The report hasn't been introduced yet.
Oh, sorry, I thought that's what Phil was doing.
Sorry, Councillor Baxter.
Would you like me to introduce the report?
I would like you to introduce the report, thank you.
In that case, I'd just like to express my nervousness about introducing this report in a public open session, because it is possible that members of the committee might be making comments, first of all, about our councillor colleagues, which might be praiseworthy, or there might be criticism, but also we're talking about a member of staff, or an interim member of staff, and I I'm not sure that it's appropriate that we should be talking about the pros and cons of individual suitability for an appointment to anything in a public session. When we talked about the appointment of the monitoring officer, when we talked about the appointment of other members of staff, we did that behind closed doors, and I'm not a fan of doing things behind closed doors, but we did it because if we're making personal comments about individuals, we should be careful about what we're saying. But I'll take your advice on it.
Mr. Watts, do you want to come back on that one?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I agree. If there's any, if there are going to be, if there's going to be any lengthy discussion about anyone's individual competency or ability in relation to these roles, then yes, I agree that we should consider going into a private session. If it's a case that there's enough information before you and you don't wish to debate the intricacies of each potential person that's going to be appointed, then you could just go to the vote and make that decision. But again, if you're going to have any discussion, then I'll probably recommend going into private session.
Thank you. And on that note, I would like to propose this. I don't feel there is a need to discussion. I would look for somebody to second that proposal. Councillor Shorrock, and then if we can go for a vote on that, you have the information in front of you. If we can go for a vote on that, should that fail, then we'll consider going into private session. Councillor Morgan.
I did have my hand earlier. I have to admit, I actually thought automatically we'd gone into private session, so apologies, and thank you, Councillor Baxter, for pulling us back. I did want to make a comment. It's not about the competency about the applicants, but it is an observation about some of the matters that have been raised in the papers, which are in the public domain, I understand. So if I may just comment that we actually, some of the points which have been picked up as actions have actually been long outstanding, and I'm appreciative. I think the Leisure Committee are monitoring regularly what's happening with the Leisure SK, and it's somewhat disappointing, and I should declare as being a former director of Leisure SK, that actually we seem to be repeating ourselves. So I will take those away separately to find out what's gone on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you doing that. So if we've got a proposer and a seconder, I'd like to go to the vote on that, please. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Welcome back, Councillor Knowles. We're now on to item 10, the Local Government Social Care Ombudsman Annual Review Letter. And I think I'm right that I'm going back to the Cabinet Member for Governance, Councillor Knowles.
That's right. Do beg your pardon?
Sorry, Councillor Knowles, before I've just had it pointed out to by my here that there were two items on that last thing. Is that vote that we had to approve both of them, just for clarification? I wanted it to be for both, so yeah, okay, thank you. Just for clarification, thank you. Sorry, back to you, Councillor Knowles.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. The item 10 on your agenda records the annual review letter that we've received from the Ombudsman, and this is the letter for 23-24, when he writes to us and tells us his findings and gives us a summary of his work with us in the last 12 months. As it says under 3.2, it shows the complaints upheld, the compliance with recommendations and the satisfactory remedy provided by the authority. There were 19 complaints in total, of which 3 were detailed investigations, of which 1 complaint was upheld, and the Ombudsman was satisfied that the Council had successfully implemented its recommendations relating to the case it upheld. And again, it shows some statistics about our record in comparison with a national record, and it would appear that we are performing better than most of the other councils, or the average of the other councils, and that is shown in his analysis. The letter is there for you. It is generally good for us. It shows that we're doing things mostly very, very well. One upheld complaint in 12 months, and I commend it to you. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Knowles. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Woolley.
It's very much a comment along the lines of, well, I was going to say there's that saying about statistics and numbers, but anyway, I won't repeat it because I shall get it wrong. But on page 105, if there was ever anything misleading, 33% of the complaints were upheld, investigated were upheld, which on the face of it is, oh my goodness, that a third? And then you find out it's one. Yeah. So I think that I'm glad that we've got both of the numbers here, but it does just show how you can pick up a false picture. Thank you.
Yeah, it does, exactly. Thank you, Councillor Woolley. Is anybody else? Councillor Morgan?
Just being pedantic, I would like to know what the complaint, or at least the area that the complaint was that they felt we had failed to address. But does anybody know where that was?
Mr. Watts, do you have that to hand?
There's a link to the decision notice in paragraph 3.6, so that sets out the decision notice of the Ombudsman in relation to the case. I think it was in relation to planning enforcement, off the top of my head. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any more questions on that? Okay. This item's for noting. We'll consider it duly noted and move on to the work programme, please. Does anybody have any points to make on the work programme? Mr. Wiles.
Just to mention the statement of accounts, we met with the auditors yesterday and we're all focused on attempting to bring the accounts to that meeting, but it's not confirmed or guaranteed that that will occur, so I may have to liaise with yourself to suggest an alternative date or an additional meeting nearer the time. Thank you.
Okay, is there any specific reason for that? Or?
The audit itself has only really just commenced, and clearly that's only 2 months away, which feels quite challenging to get it audited in time.
Okay, thank you for that. Does anybody else have any questions on the work plan? No. Okay, we move on to any other business. And in light of what I mentioned earlier, I'd like to see the committee's thoughts on having an external member added to our committee. I personally think it would work really well. I spoke with Mr. Watts on how this would be facilitated, and it would be for the council to go out and seek people that were can offer something to the committee. They will fill in some sort of application form and submit it forward, and then that will be decided on whether we have someone. But I'm thinking of the working with the transparency and everything moving forward. I think it would be good for us to have an external member on here, and that's why we were looking at taking. We went and looked at the voting rights and everything, and we thought it was not right with the committee, which was why we proposed that was a change made by full council as well. So I'm just interested to hear the committee's thoughts on that. Councillor Woolley.
Thank you. I suppose normally I would want to understand the reasoning behind it, other than I think it's a good idea, because you don't just go appointing people without evidencing a gap or a need, and I haven't heard that yet. So it would be helpful to understand the reasoning behind.
Mr Watson, can I ask you to come back on that for me as we discussed in...
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, so SIPFA guidance states that it's considered good practice for the co-option of independent members on audit committees for the following reasons. An external view can often bring a new approach to committee discussions, to bring additional knowledge and expertise to the committee where there may be skills gaps, to reinforce the political neutrality and independence of the committee, and to maintain the continuity of committee membership where membership may be affected by an electoral cycle. So they're the kind of the main points that SIPFA have identified.
Are there any more thoughts on that, Councillor Sharp?
I think it's a fine idea. It's there's powers that exist to do that already, and then obviously needs to be a process. How long would the term be? Is that set down, or is it? Are they like a peer in the House of Lords? They're going to be there for life.
Mr Watt, sorry, can you?
I think it would be up to the committee to determine that term of office, really. The terms of reference for this committee give the committee the power to make the appointment, so on that basis it will be the committee's decision, I'd assume, as to what length of office they would want that to be.
Councillor Stokes, then Councillor Morgan, and then Councillor Stevens.
It seems to be that on things like this, anything that could make us better at what we do, we should take a serious look at.
Thank you, Councillor Stokes. Councillor Morgan.
It's a comment I've made before, actually, that we've never actually been asked what our skills are. It's kind of, I find it rather ironic, actually. There's obviously we've been elected from a political standpoint, but what our actual experience basis is. Because to me, if we're doing it, it would make sense perhaps to understand what we can do. So we are looking at the gaps across, you know, where are we weaker to boost us. But otherwise, I'd support it, as long as we're doing it from an informed position.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Stevens.
I think I would put it no higher than an interesting idea. The trouble is, if you're going to appoint an outside person, you've got to be very precise in what you're looking for. Otherwise, it's a completely random appointment with random consequences. And what are we looking for? So that's the first thing. What is this sort of person, this sort of perfect figure who could opine and add to our wisdom? Because unless that's what you get, it's really just another body, I'd have thought. So I'm not sure I think it is a good idea.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Well, I'll tell you exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for another opinion of somebody with a skill set that's apolitical, that will add to what this committee has to offer. And that would be decided by the information that was put out and asked for by the council when looking for applicants. Councillor Woolley, sorry.
Thank you. Will the post or posts be remunerated?
Again, I was speaking with Mr Watts earlier, and as far as I gather, there is a stipendiary, I think we'd call it. Mr Watts?
We've currently got independent persons on the standards committee, well, not on the committee, but independent persons that look after code of conduct complaints and standards, and there's an allowance associated in the scheme of members' allowances for those posts. It might be something that the independent remuneration panel may want to review in due course, but if an appointment was made, I'd probably make it on the same basis as the independent persons for standards. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, is there any... Sorry, Councillor Knowles.
Yes, thank you. Not wishing to interfere with your judgment, but I would have thought the first thing you need is a job specification, because it's not say, yeah, we'll have one of them, and we don't know what one of them is. You know, you've got to have a job specification. You've got to know what you're trying to find. Otherwise, you don't try and find it. You don't find it for the sake of it. You find it because you've identified a need, and it needs a job specification first of all before you can agree it.
Sorry, I'd like to get a contribution from Matt here on this, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Completely agree with obviously what SIPFA advocate and which Gareth's articulated well. In my experience of working with local authorities and also police and crime commissioners who have independent audit committee members, it works tremendously well actually to have that added contribution, which is apolitical. Completely agree with what Graham's saying, that you'll go out to the market and look for the right candidates and individuals. I can only speak from experience, but having worked with local authorities and police and crime commissioners, you'll find their contribution, if you get the right persons, adds significant value to the type of conversation you have and the conclusions that you'll reach. I can only speak from personal experience of working with them. I think this is a good step forward personally. I think it shows that the audit committee is or governance and audit committee is moving in the right direction. Times are changing with regards to governance, and I think it's really important to have strong governance arrangements, and the involvement of an independent member can only do that, in my experience. Okay.
Thank you very much for that insight. In response to Councillor Knowles there, we do need to know a skill set we need, but before we do that, we have to decide whether we're actually going to go after this sort of person, whether it's something that you want. So, as again, my question to you is this something you would like to progress? Sorry.
I was just going to adding on the comments from here as well, so in particularly with what Mr. Watson said in terms of CIPFA guidance, just so you're aware, the original derivation of this was the previous government commissioned something by Sir Tony Redmond, and it became called the Redmond Review. CIPFA then created guidance on the back of that. What the Redmond Review sought to do was to look at the entire framework of external audit and public audit within local government. And that obviously was looking at the PSAA, which you may be familiar with, the Public Sector Appointments Panel, which appoints the likes of KPMG. But as part of that, they also looked at what is the quality of scrutiny and challenge that happens at audit committees. When they looked into this, they found that at that point, which is in 2020, 40% of audit committees in local government had independent members. And a key observation that Sir Tony Redmond made was to say that the challenge to management and to external parties and for members to do this, having qualified people and people who really know about how to review a set of accounts, which is highly technical, can be really challenging for members to have that knowledge, and it may not be expected. And so a key recommendation was for committees to look at, do you need skill sets in that area or other areas? So BDO have written a paper on the Sir Tony Redmond review, and what we see is echoes some of the reasons that and what are the benefits of having an independent member are to do that. I would advocate and agree with what's said here, which is a spec or understanding what gap that you feel you may need to fulfill. Just by way of example, in the last 6 weeks I've been to 3 local government audit committees and all, for the first time, had a new independent member on it. So I wouldn't be able to give you a statistic of where it's gone from 40% to now, but my anecdotal data is that most are moving in this direction, and you'd be in line with others if you took this step.
Thank you very much for that input. If I can go, sorry, yeah, okay, go.
Yeah, I'd just add to that maybe, so say all our NHS Foundation Trust that we audit, they have non-exec members, they tend to be retired chief finance officers, just to again give that additional expertise.
Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, not to be repetitive. At the county, on various committees, we have various independent members. For example, the Children and Young People's Committee has, I believe, a teacher and a representative of parents, who I think it's quite handy, because we all know each other and we know about our political backgrounds and everything else. To have someone that is not as well known and who we don't know their instinctive politics can be quite handy. Are we talking about I'm asking this to the professionals, are we usually talking about a qualified accountant?
My experience is yes, however there are no rules, so the Sir Tony Redmond review doesn't specifically say it needs to be that. I think it goes into guidance around that. It seems to be pushing into that direction. Our experiences is what committees do is to assess what you feel the skills gap is. And that could be in other areas around data and cyber, which again are highly technical areas, or do you just want to drive better scrutiny and challenge? But that's a judgment for you as a committee, to make. But if you do look at the original Sir Tony Redmond review, it does seem to focus on the financial challenges and obviously holding to account external audit and management on that.
Councillor Lay.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important that we have somebody like this on this committee, and certainly going forward, whether or not we have them on other scrutiny committees is something that we need to think about. Are we voting on whether or not we want to do this, and then it goes forward to full council, or could you just explain to me what we're voting on at the present time, please?
Okay, as far as I understand it, it just doesn't have to go to full council. We can make this decision. What I would like at the moment is your opinion on whether we take this forward and to put on the work programme that myself, the Vice Chair, the Cabinet Member and an officer will sit down and come up with a requirement of what's needed to add substance to this committee, which will then come back here to a subsequent committee, and we'll be fed the information and take it forward. So that's where we're at the minute. I'd like to just take a show of hands on that if I can, and see whether that's something that you're happy with to put into the work programme. Councillor Morgan.
Just following on from that, just a suggestion and picking up the several points have been made about getting the right mix and the right gap filling. Would it help if each of us sends to our officers basically what our core skill sets are, so you can have them go, oh, actually, there's a definite hole here, which will probably help answer your question, or think this needs boosting, do something like that, because as I said, you don't have any idea necessarily what our backgrounds are. They're quite, I'm sure, quite varied across the committee.
Again, to echo what Councillor Knowles said earlier, let's not champion what we're good at. If you're going to do that, I would rather that each member put what they think we require on the committee, rather than shout about what we're good at. So if everybody put 2 points forward that they think is something we require on this committee, I think that would be far more productive. So if I can just go to Councillor Stevens.
It's interesting because you slightly preempted me, but when Councillor Morgan talked about a hole in our skill set, it's rather difficult to see what is our complete skill set. The more difficult thing is to say what is the complete skill set that the dream Governance and Audit Committee would have. I was on a bit of paper, I'm pretty pushed to. I mean, basically, this position is sort of, like a lot of things, a sort of applied common sense, isn't it? I happen to be a barrister, but big deal, you might say. Auditors have a certain perspective, but there's nothing wrong with applied common sense. In a way, I'm not sure what this outside person would add, apart from. No, I'm not convinced, actually. Anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Woolley.
Thank you. I would very much welcome the opportunity for you and colleagues to go away and come back to us with a proposal, because I think until you do that, then we're going to continue with these questions.
Exactly, Councillor. Thank you very much. So if I can move on now, and we can just take a vote off the committee. If you're happy for us to add that to the work plan and take it forward, please. So all those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? Thank you. One abstention. Thank you. Are there any other orders of business that anybody would like to bring forward? If no, then I will call a close to this meeting at 16:02. Thank you.